I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to Leadovation. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. This podcast is dedicated to the art and science of innovative leadership. Through insightful interviews with industry experts, I bring you cutting-edge strategies and experiences of innovative leadership, helping you think differently, act strategically, and achieve remarkable results. Join me as I provide insights and tools that empower you to make smarter decisions, forge meaningful relationships. Welcome to Leadovation. In a world where emails get misread, meetings drag, and neutral messages come across as negative, the real competitive edge is how we communicate. In this episode, we unpack the lost art of human connection at work and how to bring it back. We'll learn how to lead meetings that people actually want to attend, craft questions that spark meaningful dialogue, and use presence and space to shift the energy in any room. My guest, Salvatore Manzi, and I break down practical ways to start every meeting with connection, not chaos, and how to turn data-heavy presentations into real conversations that move decisions forward. Whether you're a CEO, a team leader, or just tired of lifeless Zoom calls, this conversation will show you how to communicate like a leader, clear, authentic, and human. Salvatore Manzi on the Leadovation podcast. Salvatore, it's great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here.
Aside from our mutual respect for Italy and all things having to do with pasta and great wine, etc., I do find that your topic around communication and presentations and facilitation is so germane right now. Before we actually hit the record button, you and I were talking about we've kind of lost the art of communication. What do you think about that? Why is that? I mean, let's start with why that's important and what's going on that we just don't know how to communicate as well as we used to.
Right. There's oftentimes when I'm facilitating a team or an offsite, I will have a communication manual exercise where people list out what is your preferred way of being communicated to and from. Where do you like email, text? How do you like them used? And then they have a discussion and eyeballs pop. Oh, that's why you and I never understand. I'm texting you. You want an email. You're calling me. I want a text message. The Slack didn't go through. That's number one. Like, we are all operating from a different perspective and how to use our technology, and gaps are happening. Second, if you don't mind me sharing some science, research shows neutral is negative. If you think your email is neutral, what you need to know is it's coming across negative.
Neutral. Give me an example. What does that look like?
I send you an email. Can we have that report by the end of day? Fairly neutral. Just a data point, really. This is a time period. Now, if you and I are great friends and we are having conversations all the time, you read that in your head as Salvatore is just being like, oh, hey, here's the deadline that we have on that kind of thing. If you and I have any kind of friction, or we don't have a relationship, or I'm already under pressure from this person and that thing and this, I read that as like, insistence, micromanaging, frustration, right? Just one line gets read a very different way, and neutral is negative. So those Slack messages, those emails, those text messages, they added emoticons to try to help us solve that. The solution is start with a little bit of you than me. That's my number one principle in communication. Start by talking about the other person, their situation, their feelings, their perspective, whatever it is, before getting to the message itself. Hey, appreciate all your work on this. Heard that the deadline is now end of day. Reads very different than the deadline is end of day, right?
Right. It makes me think of a phrase I heard once from somebody that said that we judge ourselves based on our intentions. We judge other people based on their actions and then create what we think is their intention. So, Of course, your neutral is negative falls right into that.
100%. And that's you can, anytime you've been cut off while driving, that's where I find it happens. I judge that person cutting me off is such a
Hmm.
jerk, right? But when
Yeah.
I cut somebody off, I'm in a hurry. You don't understand? I got this thing, right? Like, that is where the tension, and it lies across the board, everything.
So we're talking sort of a technology way of communicating, and I keep asking people this. I was just down in, as I told you, 3 different events last week, and find out that most of the communication that's taking place with these team members, with other team members, is being virtual. It's very little do we have face-to-face conversations anymore. That being said, when we do have face-to-face meetings, I saw that you had talked about at one point in one of your pieces of literature about doing something before the meeting, like
Mm.
warming them up. I forget the phrase which you have here. The pre-meeting ritual, I think, is what you talked about. Talk about what is the pre-meeting ritual to get us into the space to have good conversations, no matter what the meeting is.
It's 100%. You need to have an unofficial start to any meeting. And that unofficial start helps the group focus in on the topic without being too prescriptive. So instead of just saying, okay, we're going to wait for everybody, we got to wait a few more minutes, we're going to just wait, like whatever. And then somebody starts talking about this and that, and you've got this wild, like cauldron of weird energies. Use an unofficial start of, hey, what's something that's working for you in your area today? What's something
Hmm.
that you're celebrating for? What's da 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 da? Something that is also achieving the goal of connection before content. I need to create connection before I get into the content. Otherwise, people don't understand what's going on in the other people's worlds. And there's going to be a disconnect when one person starts talking because they're going to interpret that as a different way.
So, Salvatore, you and I are social people. I can tell by the way because of your energy, and we connect really well because of our style preferences. What if we have a group of people in a meeting that is much less prone to need that? We might call them analytical people. We might call them people who are very data generated. We don't need to connect. Let's just get to the meaning. Gosh darn it! I don't want any more of this fliffy floppy, whatever. Throw in
Yeah,
the adjectives, right? Because it just feels like a waste of goddamn time. And I
it's
know that time is money, and we just spent 15 minutes talking about your cats, your dogs, your kids, and your fish. I could care less. What about those kind of people?
100%. I love this. First of all, those are my people. I love that I am presenting to you as a very social, energetic, extroverted person. This is me in my zone
Yeah.
of performance, right? I am an introvert. I'm an analyst. I love numbers. I love data, and I love speaking zeros and ones. But
You are.
100%.
You are.
100%. I have learned to own the spotlight after 20 years of getting into it out of the fear of having the spotlight turned on me. I don't want to sit in a
Hmm.
meeting and have somebody turn the spotlight on me. I want to be prepared to own that spotlight and be able to direct it where I need to. So that's what I've developed. And for the last 20 years, I have worked with primarily STEM, scientists, engineers, analysts, financial advisors, in turning that data into non-data speak. Because if an analyst isn't an analyst, if they're both in the
Hmm.
room, they can skip that whole touchy-feely stuff and just get right to the numbers, right? But they need to actually move their project forward, and they need non-data people. They need the support of sales and marketing. They need the support of all the rest of the teams. To do that, they have to be able to code switch and do the warm and fuzzy stuff at the beginning. There
If
is
we have people that are needing that.
there are four different kinds of thinkers, right? There are
Agreed.
four different kinds of learners. What neuroscience tells us, in any group that we're in, we're going to be dealing with four variables. And if I'm only speaking to one of those, I risk shutting off the other three.
100%. I'm just saying, is in the unlikely situation where you have the entire room on one style, and say that style happens to be very analytical in nature, do we need to have this touchy feely stuff to get us going in terms of connection before the meeting?
I would offer,
And
and I've worked with a lot of clients who are in exactly this role. They are the CTO leading their
yeah,
team meeting. Their team meeting. Those are all analyst engineers. They don't need a lot of touchy feely. There's still value to every voice in the room.
Yep.
Until a person has gotten their voice into the room, they're not fully engaged and connected with the content. There is a softball way of getting their voice into the room, which takes the pressure off of having to like provide the most profound insights about their topic. And we don't have to
Understood.
use super superficial type of
Right.
topics. Hey, what's your favorite? Blah blah blah. Like, let's not do the
Yeah. Yeah.
favorites, especially with analysts. I don't want to sit there and try to analyze what is my favorite cheese. I don't know what my favorite cheese is. Gorgonzola? No, I like right.
I
It
just
could
know
be
that
like
somebody moved it.
right. Somebody
Yeah.
moved the cheese. But there is still value to going around that room and saying, what's one thing that's going well and one challenge that you have in
Okay.
your project right now? Every voice is in the room. Now they're all engaged in your meeting. And it can take 3 minutes. If you're virtual, you can do it with the chat and done. You're moving on.
Yeah, I agree with you, by the way. I was just posing the
I
question
know.
because
I
I
love
was
playing the
thinking
devil's
like
advocate. I'm going to do it
if
towards you
somebody
too.
was going to be listening in on this, I'm thinking like, well, what would they be thinking if I were to, find the naysayer in our listeners? So, but I agree with you. You can change the question based on the audience, and it doesn't have to be, what's your favorite color? It could be something more pertinent to the business. But I
Yeah.
do find that there's another tributary to this concept about the quality of the question.
Mhm.
Not only begets the quality of the answer, but it also starts to open the doors for communication and connection and true discussion. If you got to
Yeah.
really like, hey, Salvatore, how's your day? You're going to go good. But if I say,
Good.
hey, Salvatore, what dream do you remember dreaming at night that still sticks with you today? Of course, that's very personal. You're going to go like, whoa, let's talk
Okay.
about that, right? So you can also create a great question to start off a meeting to get people connected around a topic.
Exactly. And to your point, as a facilitator, like the real work is in creating the best question. If I have
Yeah.
30 minutes to prepare for a facilitation event, I'll spend 20 minutes getting the perfect question before going in.
So let's talk about that for a second. You mentioned earlier on that there's a lot of benefit and opportunity for those people who have become mid-level managers who've transitioned from the doer to now the leader of people, and now all of a sudden they have to start facilitating and managing meetings, whereas before they were members of somebody else's meeting. Now they have their own meeting, and now we start. The analogy is like I keep thinking about this that chefs, their domain is the kitchen, leaders' domain is the meeting.
Hmm.
So, what is your suggestions about this relatively new manager who's now taking on their own meeting? What are the pitfalls, and what are a couple of tips that might help them become better meeting leaders?
There is a big challenge between the agenda and actual time. And I judge that the art of facilitation is really about learning the tools of how to manage that and the courage to push forward or pull back when it's necessary, and developing as many tools as one can to judge and not nudge, but nudge and guide those meetings. Because the real value comes up in the dynamic nature of the meeting. But if I'm beholden to the agenda and getting to a specific thing, I miss the connection and I risk possible downstream challenges with the whole team.
So, are most meetings in you talk about STEM, you've got a lot of very analytical individuals. Are these mostly meetings that are designed for reporting in on progress within our particular area, or are they focused in part around a discussion and or a decision?
I find that especially since COVID, there's been a shift to less updates and
Hmm.
more decision and forward. A lot of corporations have switched to update via email
Hmm.
or a PDF, or they have a template where they use, and the meetings are reserved for discussion, brainstorming, and decision making.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. I haven't quite myself seen that yet as much. I still see a lot of department heads coming in and talking about what they came up with, and then just moved on to the next person. And everyone sort of scratches their head and goes, "Couldn't we have just gotten this on a SharePoint? Why are we spending what could be literally thousands of dollars of combined aggregate time hearing something that we could have read?" So I get that. So how does then I like what you're saying, but is there any other tips in terms of, aside from being married to the agenda? And I think what you were sort of indicating is, let's find out where the value of the conversation is versus, this is my agenda. We have to get it exactly right. Right. I don't know how many times I've done facilitations, and maybe like 10% of the time we actually follow the agenda to the minute. It never happens, right? Like, how many times does a wedding really work out the way you expect it to? It just doesn't happen. And that's
It
the
doesn't.
art of it, I think, is following the value, following the flow. Um,
Exactly.
but what is up? I mean, so let me pivot a little bit more then. If you've got a person who's very much of a data generated style preference, you don't normally find those people to have confidence to stand in front of a group to be able to lead a conversation. It's usually a different style profile. How does, in your, I'm talking about your own background, right? You said you took 20 years to get this. How does that analytical double dipped driver individual become a more compelling meeting facilitator when it's their style says, just be quiet, just think about this, don't ask, don't say anything unless you're being told, etc.
There's a couple of things I'd like to unpack. Number one
Okay.
is break the seal early. For the more analytical and reserved or introverted person in that meeting, the longer we wait to speak, the higher the pressure becomes. Break the seal early. Get your voice into the meeting as quickly as possible. Obviously, if you're leading the meeting, that's not a challenge, but this is to everybody else in the meeting. Break that seal early. Get your voice in there. You can echo something somebody else said. You can double click on something that you want to go deeper on. You can share your own idea, but get it in within the first 5 minutes. The
Okay.
second part of that, where it's the idea of I'm leading the meeting for the first time, going from an IC to a team lead. And the biggest mistake I find when that data-rich scientist gets up to present is dialogue, not download. There's an art to making the adjustment from I have to give you all the facts and all the details and all the background and all the history so that you will make up your mind, because I will trust you to make up your mind. Pivoting to I'm going to give you a little bit, we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to give you a little bit more, you're going to turn that information into insights. We're going to have another conversation, and then you'll get to where I need to be. When I go from being an individual contributor to leading, I have to make that jump from I have to share all my data. No, I only need to share some points and lean on other people to share their insights and data to contribute and make it a richer conversation for everybody.
So, Salvatore, so I am an analytical STEM scientist, and I have a fear of standing in front of a large group of people. And so the emphasis is more on proving my value, my worth, and my education and all the degrees that are plastered over my shoulder. So how can I let go of my need for being recognized for my strengths in an area that I feel scared to be in front of all these people and not share all this data? Like, the data that I've created is my legacy, man. And now you're telling me that I have to have a conversation with other people who may not understand it like me. I mean, I hear you 100%. I'm giving you the bait, but I do feel like that's a real concern for people. And
It
I've seen
is.
it so many times. We do a lot of healthcare stuff, and we've done a lot of research, people like yourself. And I just find that some of these presentations are so dry because all there are is they're one-way conversations, and the fonts are like 8-point. You can't read it even if you were standing in front of the screen. These Venn diagrams and all this stuff that's up there just is so confusing. And we're about ready to fall asleep within 5 minutes, because we know that the person in front is trying to prove their worth.
Yeah. Yeah. To that point, if you're ever on a virtual meeting and you see your audience leaning in like this, you know your font is too slow.
It's too small.
Make it bigger for us. Make it bigger.
Yeah.
My answer would be not about me. When I get
Yeah.
up to speak, my purpose in being there is not about me.
Yeah.
When I make it about me, proving my worth, proving my value, proving that I earned these certificates and did my research, I'm going to lose my audience. When I make it about them, when I make it about connecting them with the message, that becomes the focus. And just in doing so, it becomes an act of service. It becomes a diversion from the fear of public speaking to the emphasis of serving and offering tools for connecting these people with the content. And not about me is the mantra I use. I will say it 10 times before I get up on a podium. I will remind myself that their sour faces, confused looks, their look at their phone of disinterest, it's not about me. They have a
Mm.
world going on in their own head. And I don't need to misinterpret what they just sent me as a message as they're not getting it, not connecting, not liking my message, and over rotate to explaining it more and more and more detail. If I just remember, it's not about me, it's about them connecting with my message, it changes my perspective and allows me to take all this background and experience I have and showcase how they can connect with the message. How's that?
I like it. I like it a lot. Another scenario.
I like your devil's advocate
Yeah.
aspect of it. It's really good. Keep it going.
Well, I know kind of where you're going to go with it, but I feel like it's important to bring it out.
Yeah.
Here's another scenario that I think that I see some leaders struggle with, that they have a hard time facilitating meetings because they're afraid that it might get chaotic. It might
Oh, yeah.
go into a tailspin. It might get out of control. We've got a lot of big personalities, especially when you get higher up in an organization. You normally attract the type A's who have no problem talking. And so if I'm not a strong personality, how do I rein in all this energy? Do I let it go and let it just sort of follow its own course, get out of the way? Or do I try to guide it? And if so, when do I do what?
Yeah, I love this. And I want to flip the question back at you, but I'll say two things. First of all, my friends
Okay.
used to say, Salvatore, he's not type A, he's type AAA. So I guess I've already hit that.
Oh,
Like, I used to be like OCD about like
yeah.
precision because I felt like there was security in that precision. But to your point, in those higher meetings, the dynamic, and you've got a powerful voice that's taken up all of the space. How do you navigate that? And I teach a strategy for interjection. There's an
Hmm.
art to it. Like we need to develop that and develop this with your friends and your partners. Like practice in low stakes situations so that when you do it in a high stakes situation, you don't come off as rude
Hmm.
or cold or condescending in some way. Practice interrupting people so that you can do it in those situations. But I'll offer this. If I'm in charge of a meeting, I can set structure. I want everybody to check in with one sentence. We'll go around the room. I'm going to give everybody 1 minute and we're going to time you to do. So you can create controls to
Hmm.
create equality. The last thing I would say, but to your point, is there is beauty in the chaos. That's where the
Yeah.
magic happens. So
Yeah.
as my mentor used to say, lean into the swerve, like see where it's going.
Hmm.
Trust yourself to bring it back or call stop when you need to, but go there. Let the place go there. Let it become a fertile ground for. And when you are sensing it needs to be shaped again, ring your bell or whatever it is you want to do to call the meeting back to order
Hmm.
and carry forward. What would you do? What is your advice for
Oh, it's a great question.
embracing the chaos?
Yeah, I actually do enjoy it. I tell people up front, I said, hey, I'm the keeper of the process. These are the guiding principles for this particular meeting. Now, we talk about cell phones and putting them away. If, in fact, if it's a live meeting face to face, even if it's virtual, we set up the guidelines. But I also say, I might need to step in and cut you off. I might need to keep us on track. That's what you're paying me to do, right? The goal that we want to be focused on is this problem statement, right? So we might find any number of ways to get there, and that's great. That's fine. But if I feel like we're getting caught in the weeds, we're getting too far into operations, we're no longer about vision, if that's what our purpose is, then I might say, we're no longer on the topic. We are now off topic because they know the work so much better than I do. And they
Yeah,
start getting into almost a conversation and so forth that is nothing to do with where we started. So I say, know that may happen and I might need to cut you off. And that they're so when it does happen, they're not like offended that I've done it.
right.
But I do like to sort of, you can take a look at my agendas. I was just doing this yesterday because I had 3 events last week, and I went back over the agendas and I actually tried to look at what did I actually do
Right.
versus what I had planned to do. And I do a lot of planning. I'm kind of like type A when it comes to planning meetings too, and then I let it all go when it happens.
Right.
And it never followed the sequence or even the exact questions and activities that I had designed, because the group provided some valuable insights that had to be addressed.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that's the way I kind of approach it.
I love it. One of my mentors used to say the only reason to do a process is for the conversation. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what the processes are that I've planned. And I too over prepare and I have lots of extra processes and things to do in
Yeah.
case. But I know that one of those things, all I'm trying to do is ignite the conversation. And once that
Mm.
gold is surfaced, we can follow that and really get to the good stuff.
Let's pivot for a second. I was thinking recently that there was somebody asked me, like, what was the worst space that you ever facilitated a meeting in, or a facilitation? And boy, I came up with one. There was one that was in a brewery. This is years ago, and like the public was coming by picking up beer and walking in the middle of our space. There was others that were in just awful bad lighting, no outdoor light or fluorescent lights, or a lot of pillars in the middle. You had no sight lines. I
Yeah.
mean, just some of this stuff was just some awful stuff. And other
Horrendous.
times it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
What is your I mean, because you think about feng shui, you think about your ability to create space, not just the emotional space, but the actual physical space, that we feel better. We have a different reaction to ourselves when we're in a fantastic cathedral versus when we're in a really grimy, dirty room. It brings out different things in us. What is your advice to people when it comes to not just the agenda, but the space by which this meeting takes place, if it is face to face?
You are just laying the groundwork for me to talk the rest of the day on this
All right, I'll
because
sit back. I'll just I'll
this
take a nap. You keep going, man.
this is I find so much joy in bringing people's attention to the environment. We
Mm,
seldom pay attention. In my book, I talk about being self-aware, other-aware, and space-aware
mm,
because everything in our space is impacting the way we think and the way we feel, and that is driving our ability to effectively collaborate and communicate. And so, if I'm not aware of how the space is impacting my group as a facilitator, I am a train wreck about to happen. I love finding a group that, hey, we've been having a lot of trouble focusing. Great. Let's find a room with no windows, no art, and just a table and chairs. And let's get in the room and let's just focus. I have a group that we're having trouble really getting out of this stuck. We need to brainstorm. Great. Let's find a really big space with tall ceilings, lots of light, lots of windows, and let's have an activity and movement. I love using that. And to your point, I have too often times been led to believe that the space was going to be one way and then shown up and been like, whoa, what are we?
mm,
And that can be kind of fun. Like, how do we use the space to create different energies and dynamics between the group to make it happen?
hmm
I love this.
Yeah, it's often we have a process in our team when we work with other companies is to really talk a lot about space and to make sure that whomever we're working with is aware that we're not just looking for somebody to do printing, but where is the space and can we see it beforehand?
Mm,
I try to, as a facilitator, get in the room the day before, set it
100%.
up the way I like to, get my mojo in the room, right? Get my energy in the room and start to imagine what I'm about to do before the group is actually there. And that seems to help. But when you're coming in blind,
Yeah.
you just got to go with it, right? Okay, here we are. All right,
Mm,
this is what we got. Let's see how we can make this work.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really
Fun,
really good. So
fun.
tell me about your book. You got a brand new book that just came out. Talk about that. What's in it? And if we read it, what would we learn from it?
The Clear and Compelling, it's communication strategies for big thinkers with bold ideas. There's a subtle nod to my introverts, scientists, engineers. And there, it basically distills communication and facilitation into three pillars: content, delivery, and presence. When it comes to
Mm,
content, I've spent 20 years researching neuroscience, psychology, organizational behavior, and creating frameworks of how to structure your content so that it actually connects and is memorable. Delivery techniques, How do you make sure that your voice, your body language, your eye contact is congruent with your message and that you're creating that connection on an ongoing basis? The biggest piece is presence. Where is comfort meeting authenticity in the way that you show up? And I have a whole bunch of strategies to help people break out of conditioning to meet the moment where it is, and techniques to help them practice in elevating their own presence in those meetings so that they're sure to land the message that they're hoping to and intending to.
So, aside from the message that you are conveying from a place of being present, how does the facilitator's presence affect the presence of those in the room?
Oh, in every way, I would imagine this, like, that's like asking, how does a conductor guide an orchestra, right? When the
Mm.
conductor comes up to the podium, he doesn't go, and then he does this very gentle look. He checks everybody. How are they seated? Are they leaning forward? Does that person need to sit up straight? Are the three violinists in a sort of wonky position? Do we need to get them more unified? And then he very slowly and deliberately brings them together to create harmony and keeps a focus on this one, pulling them back in. That's what a facilitator does. Walking into that room, whether you're leading a meeting or facilitating a team offsite for hundreds, the job is to create the energy of inclusion and grounding to build off of and keep increasing that energy as the dynamic nature of the meeting moves on.
Yeah, I think that's so great. Do you have any rituals for the facilitator to get him or her into a present state prior
I,
to going live?
I love this discussion. I'd love to hear your go-tos on this. When you and your team go in, what is your
Hmm.
pre-game ritual as you
Hmm.
go into it? It depends. If I'm running it, if a person is leading a team or leading the meeting on their own, for number one, what is the goal? Get really clear on what the goal is. Not just what do you want them to do or say or decide, which is important if you're doing a presentation, but if it's a facilitated event, what do you want them to feel? What do you want
Hmm.
them to experience? What do you want them to walk away with, right? That's number one. Number two, I would offer, before you begin, what do you need to learn?
Hmm.
What are you looking to, what's the mystery that you're looking to solve in that experience that you can keep focusing and keep an eye on as you direct and navigate it? Personally, I do the not about me 10 times before
Hmm.
I get into any kind of an interaction like that. And I operate from the perspective of move slower than anybody else in the room as I begin.
Oh, that's
The
really good.
there's a outward presence that is affected when I move slower than the rest of the people in the room. I appear to be in more control, and as such, I can begin to direct that control to ground the meeting, and then I can begin to change it, and I can go up and down with my cadence, with my
Yeah.
energy, but to start by that slower than the room and then bring it up. What about you? What is your pregame
It's a
ritual?
really interesting thing you just said about going slower. I didn't realize that I do that without knowing that I'm doing it.
Yeah,
And
makes
then
sense.
I am often given feedback that I have a lot of energy and I can hold it pretty well, but I don't normally start off, really at a high pitch. It's usually it's sort of graduates to that point. For me, when it comes to presence, I mean, it brings me back to my acting days because that's where my formal training was when I was many, many, many years ago.
All right.
And there was so much about the process of you have this play or call it a meeting that you are preparing for, learning your lines, learning your blocking, understanding your intentions, understanding the motivations of you and the other characters, the other people in the room. And then the lights go up and the curtain parts. And now it's just your job. And I had so much reinforcement of that is to let it all go,
Right.
to go back to your breathing, go back to being really aware of your surroundings and how you feel in it and just like look and see and observe everybody else in the room, in the space, and proceed from there,
Nice.
which seems to help. I do know that personally there was times, and I'm curious what your reaction has been, like when your own personal life has derailed your ability to be present because you're
Yeah.
just messed up. There was a period of time when, thank God we're no longer in this period, but when I would travel, and I had 10 years where I was traveling around the world in different cities, and I would call home to find out, please God, make sure everything is okay,
Yeah.
because we had some issues with our son at the time.
Hmm.
And so if it wasn't good, then of course I'm wrapped up in wondering how my wife's doing, taking care of our son, and now I'm in front of a group in China or wherever it might be, and I have to still perform, be present for them, and being able to turn off that personal gnawing concern was not always easy, but
Yeah.
always, if I could, I knew that I was onto something, and a lot of times I could. But I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of the process that I go through. And I normally, like when Joanne, my wife, she says, "How did it go?" And I said, "Well, I don't know how it went for them. I'll know is how it went for me." And so it comes back to, did you feel present during the event? Yes. Then to me, I can go, then it was a success. I can't guarantee how everybody else received it. I will work my darndest to make sure that there's a connection,
Yeah.
but they're part of this relationship as well. In some ways, you probably get that you get awarded the benefit of this meeting. You get patted on the back for it. And you kind of go like, your humility goes like, yeah, thank you. But the other half of this relationship was you, the audience, you, the team. You had a lot to do with this. It wasn't just me.
Yeah.
And I'm very much aware of that.
Yeah.
And very grateful for when we have really engaged teams that want to, get something done.
There is such a joy of working with a team that is expressing their passion and
Mm.
connected and really willing to dive in and be open and explore. And if I could touch on what you're saying, that I mean that is so real. The difference I think between a good leader and a good leader is able to show up and not let everything else that's going on in their world affect
Mm.
the people they're leading. A bad leader is coming in and everything that they're bringing is just impacting everybody else, right?
Yeah.
Um, and the difference is, are they able to, in some way, remain focused on the connection and creating connection and value and service to them? For myself, I do in my book talk about two different strategies. One is with the body. You mentioned breathing, box
Mm.
breathing is a great way to settle the body, settle the nerves, and get focused. And in that, you're counting, which is keeping the mind engaged, which helps. And the second is with what Noah St. John calls affirmations. Left on its
Mm.
own devices, the mind is going to look for danger and threats and challenges. And if you ask a question about like, oh gosh, are they going to like me? No, they're not going to like me because they're literally like, we have this history, right? But if
Yeah.
I start with an affirmation, like what ways can I add value? What am I looking forward to in this experience? How do I know that I have done my work to prepare for this? Um, Asking those questions gets the mental into a state of focusing on the positive, and with the body aligned with a regulation of the breath, I can go into a facilitated event even with my house on fire. I can still
Mm.
go in and be present and perform, to your word, in order to accomplish what needs to be done in that moment.
We talked about this before we started this conversation, was that there's this opportunity not just to have a group of people run through an agenda, and get reports out, but it's also an opportunity to experience the human connection and to elevate our communication, elevate our relationship with each other, to practice being human in a world by which we are getting more and more AI and other technologies that are separating us. I've talked about this before. Like Vivek Murthy, I think, is the outgoing Surgeon General for the United States. His whole purpose is around loneliness and isolation. That's not by accident.
No.
He chose that over heart disease and obesity as his thing to focus on. So there's something about I don't want to sound too grandiose and, in what we do, uh, Salvatore, but in some ways, I do think that there's a higher calling to all of this that brings humanity back to teams and organizations by the work that I believe that you do.
Yeah, and you do as well. That return to being human, as you said earlier, I love that phrase. Returning to being human in our interactions and developing the skill to have human interactions, because especially with generations, they're becoming more reliant or dependent upon those technology to create the interaction, and assuming that an interaction is complete and lacking the same sort of hands-on experience that those of us who were not allowed to come back to the house until the street lights came on had to find our own way of
Exactly.
human, right? I just
I know
just
what you mean. I'm in
yeah,
that era. I know.
yeah.
Yeah.
um, there is a lot of value to focusing on the art of interactions and facilitating even small group discussions. It will advance a person in every way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people don't know that's what they're experiencing. They articulate it differently. It felt good. We had a good time. Everyone was heard, but there's all this tributary benefits that I think take place that we don't always call out. And you just did. Let me pivot one last time here.
Of
What's your
course.
what's your policy about having technology in meetings, i.e., cell phones, computers, while we're having this discussion? Keep them on, keep them off.
It's a risky answer, and I think it depends on the context of the meeting. What are we actually attempting to do? I don't believe that having people connected to a device is enables them to also be connected to another person in the same way. So what I would offer is, if there's a brainstorming or an intentional conversation, devices away. Let's have that done. Let's have that down. And if you're a person that likes to take your notes on your computer or whatever it is, like, just be mindful of, like, setting it aside for a minute and having that real in-person time. I think the challenge that I've seen is the enforcement of, or the request for, devices off. People are attached. We are attached to our devices. And so it needs to be done in an artful way, and it needs to be
Yeah.
done in a way, as you know, to make an invitation. Like, if I'm going to ask everybody in the room to turn off their devices, which I've only ever done when I was facilitating a wedding. I was the
You were
officiant.
facilitating a wedding. That's interesting.
I was the officiant for a
We
wedding.
officiator. Okay.
I was the officiant. And that was the only time I've ever said the words, please turn off your devices.
Yeah.
Because to me, it can be very pedantic or controlling or micro, whatever. I try to make it as an invitation. You're probably going to be much more present if you're not connected to your devices. So the invitation is to put them on silent or put them away. And if you're okay with that, give me a thumbs up. Or if there's a reason that you need to stay on your device, raise your hand now so everybody can see that and know that you're doing this intentionally, and they're not going to judge you for doing it.
I like
Great. Now
that.
the room is set and we go forward. How do you do it? How do you
Oh,
express that
I've
need?
played around with this. For those who need data, I've quoted some article, and I'd have to go look it up now, but it basically said there was a study that took students of equal intellect around a particular topic and had them take a test, and half the group could not see their cell phones at all, even in the peripheral of their vision. And the other half of the group could see their cell phones, even though they were turned off. And those that could not got a full letter grade better than those that couldn't. And the study seemed to indicate, and I could probably find it somewhere, is that essentially when we're having these kinds of conversations, not just report outs and so forth, that cell phones actually make us emotionally intelligent dumber.
Mm.
And in some ways, it also makes us maybe a little bit intellectually dumber. Now, that's a hard way of saying that. Most of the time, people are pretty good with that. And I say, and this is an invitation. I'm just saying, I would like to suggest that this might be useful. And usually, most, if not all, participate and they get benefit from it. Another time, I remember this was years ago. I was in Beijing, China, and the Chinese at that time were a little bit behind the US in terms of their adoption to phones at that time, in terms of mid-level managers. It was just like it was a novelty. And all these young bucks, these young kids who were now in management for the first time had their cell phones, and they were enamored with this thing. And I could not keep them focused. And so I remember during a break, I went up to my hotel room, and I found this little shoe caddy that was made out of wicker or something. I came downstairs and said, all right, everybody, give me your cell phones. And you think that, and I was pretty, that was more extreme. And they reluctantly and then did, but then I brought the group came back. I had a facilitation, I had a training. What I noticed at that time, this was more extreme, is that if I didn't deal with that situation, that was such a huge issue, that I would have lost the entire week with this group. And I had 5 days with them. Yeah. So I had to set a precedent early on. It was much more draconian than I would have liked, but I kind of needed to go. I was like, what am I going to do? I mean, we got to do something. I mean, this is not good. So that's what I did. It worked out, but I've only done that once.
It's a line from a movie. It's more important that you respect me than that you like me.
Yeah.
Right. And those moments, it is important. And I think of teachers today, right? A lot of teachers, you have to drop your phone in a thing before you come into class. I can't imagine competing with the novelty of it. And I want to find that study. Just even seeing.
I got to find it too now. Yeah.
Yeah, that is, it's powerful. And it speaks to how connected we are to that as a resource, as a support. Interesting. And now we have AI. Like, should I write this paper, or should I go into AI first? Like, okay.
Well, then you can have glasses, and you have your watch that is sending you text, all sorts of stuff. It's only going to increase in volume. And again, going back to maybe the higher level purpose of all this is around, returning to being human in the space of meetings and facilitations and presentations. Yeah. Yeah. Salvatore, it's been great to get to know you. I really have enjoyed this. Close us out with, how can people follow you, and where are you in the world? If we wanted to buy your book, where can we get it? Are you on LinkedIn? Those sort of basic things.
Thank you. Clear and Compelling Playbook. If you go to clearandcompellingplaybook.com, you'll get resources. There's access to my full resource library with some frameworks and other ways of augmenting your elevation. LinkedIn is probably the best way to communicate with me. Just find me on LinkedIn, send me a message. I would love to see 5 minutes of a video of you facilitating and offer you feedback, what I see working and where there might be an opportunity. So feel free to send me that as a free resource and connection too.
You're offering that to the audience, right?
To the audience. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I would love to see your stuff as well, but no, for anybody in the audience.
That's a very kind offer for people, because I think they could get some great feedback from somebody who knows their stuff. Yeah. Well, it's great to know you. I hope our paths cross. You never know. But we're definitely kindred spirits in this topic.
Definitely. Thank you so much it's been an honor to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Leadervation with Dean Newland. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com, or check the show notes. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. Transform your leadership success with Leadervation.